understanding, I haven't had direct conversations.
How you doing?
Good, yourself?
It's my understanding that.
Can't beat it, but the temperature gauge on the car said 70.
Oh, I know.
I was like, I don't need a jacket.
But tomorrow night it's gonna get down to like 20.
I heard that it was short-lived.
So funding would be just on.
And then I think it's like 74 a week from today or something.
I think we're distinctly.
Tell you what, there's something to be said about odd weather pattern. I mean, no snow last year, no snow this year. 2 years ago, 3 feet.
Yeah, someone needs to refill Mother Nature's bipolar lens, I think.
How are you doing? Good, how are you? Doing well, thank you.
Like,
How's it going?
good, you?
Chris, I don't know that we've met. Mark Stotts.
Mark, nice to meet you this way.
Good to meet you.
We met at lunch.
Eric, I know we met.
Yes, nice to see you again.
Everything you suggested.
Oh,
Whatever Eric says, we're doing it.
well, don't tell the public that. I don't wanna get blamed when stuff doesn't work out right.
No, you had some nice input. We've certainly taken what you had and did a nice job of summarizing history and that kind of stuff. It's great, so thanks for doing that.
How do you like it here so far?
Give it time.
Good
Give it time.
We didn't work the questions.
Way to go, Mr. Booster. This city.
We've been down to Lakeside Park.
Well, not recently, but all the plunge time.
Were the heaves there though?
I'm good. Actually, I have a question.
You watched
I have to go,
Thursday or Friday?
but like I don't know who the hours is, like I feel weird. I just put this on Kim's desk.
What's interesting is
I
that
know.
you get that it happens right at the lake shore, but we have the walkway, which looks almost untouched.
Right.
And then there's heaves on the other side of it. It's like it pushed the whole,
Shut the whole thing, yeah.
and the Your Boat Club thing, like all their electric and plumbing,
All
that's,
jacked up, yeah.
yeah.
Wait, did you heard from Jill?
I'm not.
I haven't either, just so.
You guys ready? No? Abby, are you doing roll call?
Yeah, I normally do roll call. I mean, you're welcome to do it, but no.
Should
Ah.
probably make sure this is shut off.
Thank you.
You bet.
Have a good night.
You too.
All right, with it being 5:30, I'll call tonight's Economic Development Authority meeting to order. And Abby, can we get a roll call, please?
Sure can. Commissioner Roberts.
Here?
Commissioner Langness.
Present.
Commissioner Lorge.
Here?
Commissioner Hoyt.
Here?
I'll note for the record, Commissioner Grindal and Commissioner Wright are absent. Chairman, President Erickson.
Here. Invite you all to rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we have an agenda before us. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda? Or any adjustments?
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
First and a second, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, we've got an agenda. We got an open forum on the agenda this evening. If there's opportunity for any citizens to express any requests or concerns. Is there anybody online? Is it online presence, right?
We no longer have an online participation option in our meetings.
All right, excellent, thank you. All right, then we do have a consent agenda item, approving the minutes from the regular meeting on February 10th, 2025. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, regular agenda item. So we've got a GLG Forest Lake Properties LLC purchase and pre-development agreement First Amendment. And Abby, are you walking us through that or
Yep.
Mark? Okay, great.
Thank you. In August, the EDA approved an enclosed purchase and pre-development agreement with GLG Properties, GLG Forest Lake Properties. As a reminder, this was an agreement to sell the 280 Broadway Avenue West property for future expansion of the Spike and Hool site. As part of their due diligence, GLG determined that they found a telephone line that wasn't disclosed across the property. It wasn't something that we were aware of, and it took quite a bit of time to figure out whose line it was and if it was servicing anybody before the line could end up being disbanded. The prospective purchaser was just concerned that that could have become an impediment to the development if it was a line that was actively servicing any of the users, particularly, most notably, US Bank. He didn't really necessarily want to shut off the connection to them. What tonight before you is an extension just to finalize the sale. As a reminder, there's several different goals goals and objectives of the city that this sale would help fulfill./Included those in your packet. They've agreed to enter into the amendment to develop the properties as discussed and agreed to with the city by 12/31/27. Once this is approved, the sale is finalized, they are making application for the site plan review. You would probably see work occurring on the site this year. They will be well in advance of that 12/31/27. And then as a reminder, if they don't actually fulfill those obligations, the property would revert back to the city. So staff does recommend that the EDA discuss, and after discussion, move to enter into the enclosed First Amendment to real property purchase and pre-development agreement with GLG Forest Lake Properties LLC with minor modifications as needed by the city attorney. Any questions?
Any questions for Abby? I'm just curious, what did they find out about that telephone line? Was it-
It doesn't appear that it's servicing anyone. The challenging part is just we had no record. We think that it probably maybe went in during the Broadway Avenue reconstruction project, but there was no city record of it going in. The pedestal for the telephone pole was right next to the light pole, and so it just kind of looks like it might have been a little bit of a renegade service. It was most likely serving the elevator before the current landowner purchased the property and had been disbanded quite a while.
Any other questions? Then I'll make a motion that we enter into the enclosed First Amendment to real property purchase and pre-development agreement with GLG Forest Lake Properties LLC with minor modifications by the city attorney. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, signal by saying aye.
Aye. Opposed?
And the motion carries. All right. So Abby, I think you're taking on the next one as well?
Yep. I'm your host for the roadshow tonight.
Awesome.
In November, staff presented the EDA with challenges associated with the EDA's current commercial improvement incentive program. Some of the constraints that I noted at that time is that I noted that the program's just not being used, and I attributed that to what I could assume was a couple different things. One, lack of marketing, just plain and simple. The city has this just buried on the EDA. The city has this buried on the Invest in Forest Lake website. The second was there was a limited number of properties eligible for this, really Broadways along Highway 61 and Broadway downtown. But when people don't know it and don't know they're eligible, no program used. Then when you actually kind of take a look and the processes and procedures for the administration of the program, it was really cumbersome. Like, let's say you weren't an EDA member and you wanted to participate, you had a number of different interactions with the city that really for 10% deferral of your project costs might not be worth it. What I'm finding in our line of work, and I've been finding for years, is property owners, applicants, really only want one interaction with the city, maybe two. And so what I've done is worked with the city attorney to modify the program, not only to streamline those processes and procedures, but also to make the program eligible to all non-residential or commercial industrial properties in the city. Essentially, if you produce a tax base and a commercial industrial property, you're eligible for this. Also, as you might remember, worked with the chamber and the county EDA to expand some marketing materials for businesses. and this is now being highlighted in that brochure, just finding different ways to help market the program after a amendment is something that we're working towards. So if the EDA is favorable, tonight I'm requesting you move to approve the amendments. After that, I will update our application forms, update our websites, and really start kind of doing a little bit, casting a wider net essentially of marketing to try to see if we can't maybe put some dollars back out in the community. So I recommend you review and discuss, and after all discussion, I would recommend you move to approve the Commercial Incentive Improvement Program updates. Any questions?
Have you thought about direct mail? City letterhead, so they open it?
Have not, but that's certainly something that we can look into to see what those costs would be. The EDA does have
Because if I'm
some dollars.
downtown, I'm running a business, unless somebody, physically comes and tells me, I'm probably not going to the city website for anything
No.
unless there's a problem.
And that's the thing that I've been finding is there's lots of projects that have been eligible, but we're catching them too late. We have to catch them before the project starts. And so that's where I do think, I certainly can look into that as an option, for sure.
I just, you get the letter and it says City of Forest Lake on it, you're gonna open that up because you're probably thinking there's a problem. And then,
Why would you
just
assume?
because I've gotten those letters down. We've used the program, I think, twice. We did it at 59 North Lake Street, and we did it at, 407, where Golden Ash and Nothing But Hemp is. And it worked out great, I mean, but you have to spend 50 to get 10.
You have to get 5, because it's a 10%
to get
program.
5.
Yep.
So we were the old chalet, remember, it looked like a Swiss Miss chalet deal, we took that whole facade off. I mean, well, that's the only way to describe that. It was kind of an icon in town, I felt bad tearing it down, but I think direct mail might be a little, to the, owner of record,
Yeah.
might get you a little more action with that.
What I might be able to do, we might be able to do some target mailings too. I can pull assessors data for commercial industrial properties, and we can actually probably look to see whose valuations are being decreased and maybe trying to do some incentive, might be something. But I'll look into what we could, kind of some options for that and bring that back to see if you have any preference for where those mailings go. I think a mass mailing right now might be too much, but yes, certainly can.
Is there any interest on the EDA's part to increase that, incentivize them to do more? Or a higher level, more of a match, I guess, not match, but
A reimbursement.
Kind of along that line, I was just going to ask, how does our program as it sits today from a reimbursement standpoint match up against maybe other communities of same or similar size? Any programs they have?
There isn't, I'm not aware of as many communities that do this. I haven't done the research to know, but I would say it's probably low, especially when we have a max of $5,000. I think increasing that, if you increased it to 20%, where somebody's getting 10,000 back, that's pretty substantial cost. But that also then limits the program. Each year you only have about $50,000. So if you did max out, you'd get 5 projects. But that does incentivize, some significant dollar investments in those
and
properties.
historically, have we even come close to 5 projects a year since we've started this?
No, but there just has not been the marketing. And that's where, I have had people reach out. So one landowner with 2 properties that were not eligible, my intent is to go first to them. My hope is that we catch them before the work occurs, right? And then we're able to kind of streamline that system that way. My recommendation would be, let's see what happens this year. And then I think take a look at whether or not in '26 we'd want to increase that amount. But that would be 10 projects. Do we think we have 10 projects this year? I don't know.
I
Arguably, probably
personally, I'd rather see it higher and incentivize people. I mean, we're already in the first quarter, it's.
Yeah. Yep.
I think that we probably have the bandwidth to if we had 5 projects going this year, that would be a pretty significant win, I think. So personally, I agree bumping it up to something higher.
I was gonna just make the, excuse me, I was gonna make the note a little bit later that I'm included in the dais tonight for your reference is a 2024 EDA annual report. It's kind of, I think, the first time you might see something. Sorry, it's not on glossy paper, but it's a first stab. In 2024, we only had 15 projects that exceeded that $250,000 level. So, you know, we might have a lot more projects that have a smaller investment level, but there aren't that many projects annually that are kind of putting big money in. Granted, this program wouldn't, you know, we kind of cap it at that, at 20, right now it's 10%, 5,000. So if we increase the 20, we'd need to determine if then we're going to that 100,000 mark. That makes sense? That would have to be. Is my math doing right?
I didn't follow your math, but if I could interject, Mr. President, just from my own experience, when I got to Centerville, you know, they were just starting up an EDA. They wanted to look at a facade grant program. I stole White Bear Lakes, as cities always do. We steal from each other. That's the best way to do it. And theirs was a 3-to-1, so, you know, 25% match. And we rolled with that for a little while, didn't get any takers. Went down to a 2-to-1 match, didn't get any takers, so we went to a 1-to-1 match and got a couple of projects off the ground. I'm not suggesting you go from 10% to 1-to-1, but I think, you know, it's certainly within the realm of, you know, you're asking, are we higher or lower than most people? I would say we're quite a bit lower than most of these programs. I think, quite frankly, it does just come down to whether or not people are, I think the appetite for people on paperwork to get money, I mean, you saw during the pandemic, people wouldn't even fill out a 1-page thing to get free money. I mean, it's people's appetite to do some paperwork to get a little bit of money is really, really low. That threshold is like, I don't know, you gotta give them a fair amount and you gotta keep the paperwork to a minimum. That's been my experience, but.
Have we ever considered a different category? Since we're looking at facades and dressing up our downtown, there's certain shop owners that don't have enough money for a $50,000 refacing. What if we were more interested in funding, like a 1-to-1, a $5,000 paint job and some light fixtures or some, you know, cleaning up of landscaping in front, not a major project, but something less and paying a bigger proportion of it to make our city look better. I don't think a lot of business owners have the capital right now to invest in doing a major refront.
Commissioner Lorge, members of the commission, the exterior facade improvements does include siding, painting, lighting, windows, doors, and gutters, so long as the improvements are visible from a public street, sidewalk, or lakeside memorial park.
But that's still, we're only paying a small portion of that. I'm
Correct.
talking about maybe we should be paying a bigger portion of a smaller project.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So still capping maybe the project total cost, like they invest 50, we give them 10 back or something.
I'm thinking a smaller project.
Smaller
than that.
even.
I'm thinking if somebody's got 5,000 in the bank, we match them 5,000 like White Bear did, and they're much more able to handle that then, rather than a major project for 50,000.
Yeah. I didn't pull the numbers. I certainly can look. A lot of those projects would never require building permits. We don't know what those investments are, but I would say that there's probably far more of those smaller dollar investments than larger dollar investments.
And then for those of you that know more about construction and costs, could a small shop owner in town for $10,000, could they do a major, from the street, major cleanup and paint job for $10,000 where the city paid $5,000? Is that a reasonable amount or is that not reasonable?
I think, you know, depending on the size of the building, you could paint and a couple fixtures, you could do that for under 10, I mean, for that dollar amount, I would guess, if it's not a massive building.
I think we should look at that. That's just my input.
I think you definitely need to raise it.
So I think, yeah, hearing that you want to raise the reimbursement.
Nobody's gonna come out and spend 40 if they don't have to for, and, you know, if they're sitting on the fence and they've got $40,000 hand, to me, $5,000 is not enough incentive for them to take the plunge and do it. To say, I better take advantage of this before they quit it. You know, 10, 15, I mean, that's just, I'm trying to think when we did ours, I think we exceeded it. We were able to get the maximum amount.
Which would have been $5,000 on a $50,000 project. So I'm hearing you, many of you say you want to increase it 25%? And then is there merit in trying to keep that project cost low and, you know, a project $100,000 or less? It captures some bigger investors, but it also makes it eligible for smaller investments. Or a scale of, let's say, 25% for projects up to 50,000, 50% up to projects 20,000?
I think if I were to suggest, and we're gonna do a scaled thing like that, where there's a higher percentage for a lower amount, instead of incentivizing them to cap their total cost, say that the first 100,000 is at X%, and above that is at X%. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And then you're not disincentivizing.
$100,000 project would burn through everything we have budgeted this year. So I think we'd want to figure out what that top cap would be to know that we're not necessarily, one project is,
When's the last time it was used?
I'd have to look. In my time here, it has not been used. It's almost
A
3
while.
years, yeah. Would you like me to explore a couple different options and bring something back for you next month to kind of look at, you know, maybe what industry standard is, or even go through some permit records to see what some past investment is? Or do you kind of, I mean, is a goal to just use the money, doesn't matter if it's one project or it's 10, or is the goal to maybe try to get it into, you know, many hands?
Well, I think that's a great question, and it's really kind of us deciding what does a win look like? Is it making sure that the money is spent? Or is it making sure that we have X number of, you know, or you know, designing it so X number of projects happen? So I guess from that perspective, what would feel like more of a win from an EDA perspective?
Isn't our goal to beautify the downtown area?
So I think that is part of it, but now that it's expanding, I think the more properties you can touch, that's more of a win, I think, than just doing one major project, which, you know, we're willing to do that, but if we can touch more and do more, in this case, beautification or enhancements of exteriors, I think that's more of a win than just one building in town that would use up the whole budget potentially in 1 year. So I don't know how you could craft that for that outcome, if that's the desire of the rest of the EDA, but.
Well, from that perspective, I would think that having a higher, like closer to 1-to-1 on a smaller, like say a $10,000 project or 5,000, whatever, I mean, that would move us more in that direction from my point of view, where if we go from 10 to 25%, but we also raise the you know, the top end of the funding, you know, you see you got to spend 100,000 to get 25, you know, that's probably not going to get us to that end.
And that's just, my thought is just touching more properties than less, but maybe, I don't know if that's.
Other opinions about what a win looks like on this project?
I think anything is going to be a win over where we've been at for the last few years. So if that meant one project, I would say that is a win. But my preference would be to touch multiple projects if possible. And so if we can incentivize smaller amounts, or at least the first portion of an amount at a higher rate, I think that is a good direction to go. I also like the idea of doing some direct mail and maybe promoting the program.
I just need to get the word out easier and faster.
And in that mailing, you could put down, if we agreed that we could go 1-to-1 on smaller projects, you could get that word out there then, you know. If you're not looking for a major remodel, how about painting your front? And it would be nice if you can get like one side of the street all harmonious in their plantings, you know, and then that could be part of it, you know, to match them up. And so when people are coming and walking along, there's continuity in the look. And we had talked about a look for downtown back when we were doing the major downtown project. Maybe that's when we bring in the new kind of street signs or business signs, something like that. Anyway, I think that should go in the letter too, after we decide if we're gonna do that.
Member Hoyt, any opinion on what a win looks like?
It'd be great to touch as many people as possible, but if somebody shows up with a good refacing plan, and that's gonna take all the money, so be it. I'm a first come, first served kind of an operator, would be my thought.
Well, I think this has been a really helpful, important discussion. Now, we do have a draft update in front of us that expands the boundaries of this thing. I guess, can I put out for a suggestion that we maybe move forward with expanding this to the broader boundaries of Forest Lake, and then have staff come back with some ideas based on other communities of, hearing our feedback, what, might make sense for our next EDA meeting?
I have one question, is this in a certain geographic area, Lake and
No.
Broadway, or is it?
It used to be.
It used to be, when we did it, that's where it was, but now it's citywide?
That's what this motion, or if somebody makes a motion, we can get there.
That was the discussion in November, was trying to expand it citywide, that any commercial or industrial property would be eligible. And so I think it's, do we still want to expand it to all commercial industrial? And then I think that's maybe that first, that's the question tonight. And then I think really more than anything, what I would need to do is probably tweak the parameters a little bit more to try to, what I'm hearing a majority of you kind of saying is, we want to touch more, and we want to hit some of those smaller projects that can have a big impact. Frankly, if somebody's got $100,000 in the bank, 10% of that's really not that, it's still a lot of money. $10,000 is still a lot of money. This isn't, I don't think, who the program was intended for. It was really trying to get some of those smaller projects and encourage them. Then I think what I would do is maybe ask the EDA then to table consideration of this, and I can bring back a couple different, maybe it's 3 scenarios. If this, then that. If we implemented 25% for projects up to this amount, this is about how many we might be able to meet, or something like that, and then you can kind of figure out which one we want to go with. I also heard Commissioner Lord bring up landscaping, which is not currently in here, so I think we'd want to maybe just touch on whether or not we'd want to include some of that if permanent landscaping would be an eligible expense.
Did I hear you correct, Abby? You said you'd prefer this be tabled rather than have what's passed?
I would prefer at the moment we table it, just so that I can retool the program and we're not necessarily updating piecemeal, that we update the whole thing all at once. If somebody came in right now and wanted reimbursement on the 10%, I think I would start that process with them. But I think if we're gonna expand it to a 25% or a 50-50 for lower costs, I'd really wanna make sure that all those updates are all packaged together at one fell swoop.
Do we need a motion to table then?
Yeah, it would be a motion to table.
I'll motion to table until staff has prepared further to bring back to us at a future meeting.
I'll second it.
We have a first and a second on tabling. All those in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any further discussion? Oops, I should have done that first. Anybody opposed? All right, we'll table it. All right, so next on the agenda then is a conversation about a joint workshop with City Council. We got a few dates in front of us, and I know I personally had a few conflicts, so I gotta pull my calendar up.
So included in your packet was a few dates trying to schedule a joint workshop between the EDA and the council. The predominant item on the agenda is Headwaters 123. The EDA's work plan talks about kind of really analyzing the Headwaters 123 and trying to figure out where we're kind of going in 25 and beyond with Headwaters 123. But since I've had discussions with the EDA and briefly with different members of the council, there's just in general some kind of consensus building between the EDA and the council that's being sought, as well as just kind of retouching on that next few years' work plan. So I threw out a few dates: Monday, April 7th, Tuesday, April 8th, Thursday the 10th, Tuesday the 11th, Thursday the 17th. This would be an evening, maybe a 6 o'clock meeting or something, couple hours, hour and a half, couple hours. Whole idea, just bring these two bodies together to kind of workshop a few different items so that it helps really update the EDA's work plan, but also provide some direction to staff on a few pretty big ticket items that we need to start working on. Are there dates that just don't work for folks?
And you're talking about Tuesday, the 15th, right?
It looks, yes, yes, yes. We're not gonna have it on a Friday, the 11th.
And what time of day?
In the evening, probably a 6 o'clock, 6:30.
Thursdays don't work, then it's the Lions.
Okay.
What is your conflict, Leif?
The only three that are options for me are the 7th, 10th, or 15th. And since Jenny can't do the 10th, so the 7th or 15th.
So the 7th or the 15th?
I would move for the 7th, the sooner the better, I think, on this. 7th would be great.
Sure, I'll talk with the council tonight as well. The idea being I want to get the most of you present, right? I know we have 2 members not here tonight, but ideally I want a majority of both bodies. So I'm hearing the 7th or the 15th. I would prefer sooner than later as well, but selfishly, if we had another week, then it gives me a little bit more time to prepare, so.
I believe all the dates work for me.
Okay, thank you. I'll keep you posted. You should see some correspondence by the end of the week with setting that on everyone's calendars, so after I talk with the council this evening.
Perfect, thank you. All right, so then updates. Start with Abby.
The only thing, for those who haven't met, Mark Stotz, our new administrator, is here. I think he went around and met everyone. A couple other business-related items. You should have received an email from me about the April Chamber Mixer that's being hosted by the county and Forest Lake Area Schools Career Launch Program. If you're able to attend 3 o'clock on April, the first Thursday in April, let me know. I'll sign you up. I know Commissioner Lorge and I will both be there, and so there'll be presence from the EDA, but just extending that invitation. And then also on the dais tonight is kind of our first attempt at making a little bit of an EDA annual report. It's a part development summary, part these are the activities of the EDA, but really trying to start summarizing the kind of community and economic growth of Forest Lake. Trying to elevate us a little bit in kind of showing off some of the things that we are doing, because there's been quite a bit. And I just really tried to snapshot 24, and I really tried hard in the development world not to say, oh, all these things have been approved. 25, you're gonna see, the apartment building down by the YMCA come into this. And so this will be updated annually for you folks. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, but it'll be published online eventually as well.
Excellent, thank you. Mark, anything you want to add?
I don't think so, no.
Okay, it looks like we don't have Chris here from Washington County, and then Nanette was not able to make it from the chamber. And Abby had asked me to speak to that as a member of the board. So coming up on March 29th is the Forest Lake, the Expo, Lakes Area Expo, which highlights community businesses, and it's a home show. There's a lot of stuff going on that day. It is from 9 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. up in Maranatha Church, just north of us here. There'll be food trucks there, vendors, be a great event. So I've got tickets for you all if you always want to make sure to be there on that Saturday and see what's going on. Any other updates from the EDA members? No? All right, then we get to move into a closed session. Does anybody want to make a motion to make that happen?
I'll move to close the meeting pursuant to Minnesota Statutes 13D.05 Subdivision 3C3 to develop or consider offers or counter offers for the purchase or sale of real or personal property identified as Lot 1, Block 2, DePonte First Edition, and Lot 1, Block 1, DePonte Third Edition, Washington County, Minnesota. The closed session will be held in the Forest Lake Conference Room and will commence immediately. Once the closed session is completed, the EDA will reconvene the open meeting portion in council chambers. Once back in session, the EDA will adjourn the regularly scheduled EDA meeting.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right. We have a first and a second. All those in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And we're moved into closed session.
We're coming back in here.
I should bring it.
You should. You should. She'd appreciate that.
She does like those.
Absolutely. One hasn't given you one. so. We need Abby to,
Oh, okay.
here to, but do we need to make a motion to close, or can I just adjourn?
We have to reopen, so you have to reopen the meeting, and then one of us has to just move to close.
Yeah, it's just too much stuff.
I make a motion that we reopen the EDA meeting. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, all those in favor, signal by saying aye.
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 And we are open, and I will adjourn the meeting at 6:35.
Well done.
First one under my belt.
Look at that.
So now you can tell our former member that the meeting ended earlier when she wasn't here. Tease him a little bit.
I'm back because I never leave. I was just waiting for you guys. I had to show you this.
Oh, is this,
Thank you.
Have a good night.
this supposed to do this in front of a normal?
See ya.
We'll have Don, if you're comfortable with that, Don or Adam will notarize your signature.
So just the one?
And the developer, that's the developer's signature. We have their signature page. Thank you.
Perfect, yep, thank you.
Yeah.
Is it computer spin, or is it better with another LED?
Common question. So our electric bill,
Like this? We make ourselves a little more elevated just with,
all of the lights.
it took me forever because we
That face the front.
this kind of stuff is non-existent.
Wi-Fi switches
Can only imagine.
and all the landscaping lights, outdoor lights, they automatically trigger off as soon as the show starts. They use more power than the entire bunch of us.
What I do every day.
I would never have guessed that. I would have thought for sure it was an extra 150 a month or something.
No, almost nothing.
I did.
It all runs on a tiny little Raspberry Pi. It's a computer the size of a character.
Really?
And they made 50 bucks. And I was like, really?
It's fun. But I was
This
saying,
is what they did
we
Friday.
were up in Northwood this weekend. I didn't even know you guys had an office up there.
They got me.
Oh, yeah, we're by the mall there.
Yeah.
They all
Slept
sang
in the
happy
mall.
birthday.
What's going on at the mall?
We had the grandkids, so we went to the little play center inside there.
They're very sweet.
It's about all that's left of that mall.
Furniture stores.
That was the thing they wanted to do, the one that they wanted.
But I saw
But they
must
wanted
be.
to.
Here, here. Oh, they have an office.
Yeah, that's been there for 20 years probably.
No idea. I meant to ask you, so why did you switch offices?
From when I. Patrick.
Yes.
I work as a lot of Legit now.
Stuff in there.
When you're adopted grandparents. They were, I don't know anyone can say they absolutely love their job. I'm lucky. I love, they're the greatest people. And I can't even imagine.
This is my seat, isn't it?
It's just the greatest. And who gets to have that?
Right.
At some point, you hate your job every day. I don't. Like, all I gotta do is go look at them and talk to them, and it's all grand. Like,
Right.
you guys are awesome. We currently have cheerleaders now.
Really?
Yeah, because Jamie and Forrest wanted to run from East Hampton to school in Redwood. Right? They didn't want to share their gym. So they're giving us buildings, and I was like, that's $5 grand a year, I'll take it. Yeah, it was income. So they're all there right now, all these little numbers, like 10 and under. Hardly income cheer. So yeah. Yeah, it's good. It's a busy business.
Yeah, I bet, yeah.
Did you see the Cadillac?
No.
It's in the box.
Oh, okay. In the box?
I have both of our kids are grown up.
Wow.
Not one, not until June. She has one, and I have, I don't know what I'm doing.
That's the part of your job.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. And you, I get, sometimes I overbook,
Mm.
which happens, because there's just so much going on, you can't possibly keep it straight, but I haven't had an issue because we have upstairs and downstairs.
Yeah.
Sometimes works, but I'm like, it's a blessing. Yeah, I'm lucky to have it downstairs, otherwise I would be like. So, have to be outside, but. Well, we have a huge piece of land there that needs to be used.
What do you recommend?
Me? Personally? I have high hopes. You guys turn my whole years, because it has to be torn down. It's got a condo. She's building about selling down. Senior homes. It's on a golf course. It is. But it's really good because they have activity going on. But also community roads.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of.
Yeah, if you send those over to me, we can start getting those ready for 462. I'm assuming there wasn't any, have you looked at them?
Because we have.
Okay, I was gonna say, I'm assuming they're very,
Nothing.
like, this isn't a Gucci area, this is, I would say, you know, look at them and just make sure that you don't feel like, this is great. If it's great, find it, so we'll step back and give us some stipulations.
I think we could do. That's a lot. But it's just.
But if it's held up by duct tape, then.
Already told her it's not.
Okay.
But I think we have, we have a little bit of plans. We have this massive piece of land that is building community center. Why a lot of work?
I
I like how you're like, no, no, it's not usually. Yeah.
Or is it part of that?
Yeah, on that. Special fives,
Oh, you just had it on a revised one that has E added to it?
Yeah.
Where do we see?
Yeah, that's the only thing, I just wanted to show what it is. I thought it was sent that to staff, I just sent it to.
Right, I did, for a while. Don't take more, I'm sorry, I try to keep that
No, yeah, that's all right.
inside. Not trying to mark.
Somebody left their water.
Oh, it's your water?
Can I drink it now?
Blake might still be here.
Oh, he is. Okay. Should I move it down?
Still here.
I'll move it, yeah, I hope he is. What do you have for us?
You know what, I don't know
Did you
who's,
change it?
sent earlier?
This one?
Yes, it's amended now. So we looked at it, I
I wish I still did, but had an opportunity to buy one back in '96 that I should have bought, but I passed on it. Thought it was too much money. In '96, it was $1.3 million over Maple Grove. Well, yeah, you just, you're young and you're stupid and you're like nervous anyways, and I'll, it's probably worth 10 million today, but that's all right. It's only money. Yeah. Makes the world go round, but also causes lots of challenges too, so.
Give it a little extra.
Like you fired a shot off or something.
Just kidding.
I wasn't going to be here because I
All right, with it being right at 7 o'clock, call the meeting to order. Jolene, can you do roll call?
Council members Erickson,
Here.
Larson,
Here.
Miller,
Here.
Valento,
here.
Mayor Roger, I'm sorry, Mayor Roberts. I was gonna say Mayor Bain, Mayor Roberts.
Here. All right, if Kim, please stand for the pledge.
Turn the same way.
All right, council, we have a agenda in front of us. Is anyone willing to make a motion to approve the agenda?
Also move.
Go ahead, sir.
Move, approve the agenda.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor, just to note that it is an amended agenda from what was sent out, if we could.
Thank you. And that was, so we're adding item 7E to the agenda.
Correct.
Any other motion?
No, so noted.
Okay, all right. Great. Open forum. This is an
You gotta
opportunity.
approve it though.
Oh, did we not approve?
Not yet.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Open forum, this is an opportunity for any citizen to speak to any city concerns. Please limit it to about 3 minutes if possible. And do we have anyone that is interested in speaking this evening?
There's no one signed up, Mayor.
All right. Item 6, consent agenda. I would like to make a motion that we approve consent agenda A through H and then J through I, and pulling item 6I for for discussion.
Second.
Mr. Mayor, I'll just correct you. I think you said A through H and J through I, but I think you meant J through L.
J through L, yes. Thanks for the correction. And there, we have a motion? Second?
Still second it, yep.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. So would we then add that first item to the end of the agenda, or that I to the beginning?
Mr. Mayor, you can handle it now if you
Okay,
like.
all right. As long as it was consent, let's do that. So I'm just asking that we pull that North Shore Circle Park Restoration Agreement. Just some more conversation. We have new council. And just if someone from staff could kind of go through maybe the timeline of that, and if we have any additional questions. I guess what I'm trying to avoid is the situation we had, although it's not right away at City Park, where maybe the neighborhood wasn't informed or not knowledgeable about this, and then all of a sudden we have a problem and we start making small depressions like we did on North Shore. So, Dave, would
No,
that
you
be?
did already.
Yep.
Okay.
So as you probably know, North Shore Circle was reconstructed, was it 2022? 2022, redid all the underground sewer work and repaved the road. Doing all that work triggered water quality, or triggered watershed treatment of water. At that point in time, there was two parklands, North Shore Circle Park East and North Shore Circle Park West, that were up for discussion. It got reviewed by the Parks Commission, and they had chose to use the westerly park for the BMP. So after the project, it was kind of unsightly. It was long grass and a kind of a pond in there, and not very easy to mow, and got a number of complaints from residents out there that it just didn't look very nice. So, in working with the city staff and working with the watershed, they obtained a grant to do shoreline restoration, add some trees, add plants, flowers. The city's gonna add a trail to the lake and a bench. So that's what this project is, to kind of beautify the stormwater project that was put in as part of that road project. So the water quality project was already there. We're not taking more, we're just trying to enhance it to make it look a little nicer than how it was left after that project. This agreement also says that the watershed are the ones responsible for the maintenance long-term to maintain all their plantings and that shoreline for a minimum of 10 years and then auto-renew every 5 years after that. The city would just be responsible for maintaining that gravel path and the bench, which is minimal maintenance long-term.
Anyone have any questions on that?
Yeah, what's their history of maintaining that type of property? If they're gonna be responsible for it for the next 10 years, what is their expectations on them as far as what that looks like?
Maintaining the plantings, yes, we would still mow the actual upland grass, so there's, off the street, there's still mowable grass, and that pond is designed to be dry unless it rains, so we'd continue to mow that. They would maintain, if you see in your consent agenda, their renderings of what their enhancements are, that's what they would be responsible to maintain. We would mow the rest of the grass and then maintain that trail and bench.
It looked like in the renderings that the trail was going all the way down to the lake, is that correct?
Excuse me, what
Is
was
the
it?
trail going all the way down to the lake?
It's going, the shoreline has like a bank to it, right, so it's going to the shoreline, yep. They just can't do that as part of their grant because that's not considered water quality, so it's pulled out as an alternate, and then we'll just add that amenity in.
So is there, what's the intent with that trail? Is there gonna be like kayak tie-ups or anything like that, a fishing pier at some point down the road?
The intent is to have it as like a passive access. We didn't want it big enough where it'd be appealing for somebody to try to back their trailer down there, but also wide enough for if somebody in the neighborhood or somebody close by wanted to park there and walk a kayak or canoe down. There isn't long-term plans for fishing. I don't know how deep that gets out there. You might have to put a pretty long dock out there for fishing, but it's more designed for just, paddle boards or canoes or kayaks. But we had first designed it as 8 to 10 feet long, and I think that would be too appealing for somebody to back their jet ski trailer down there, so we're trying to shrink that up just enough to kind of make it look more like a trail. It'll be signed to as well, non-motorized vehicles, and so.
That's all.
So I'm glad to hear that. So just to follow up with that question, so you said that the previous park commission did look at this when it was and decided and was aware of what was going on and made that determination of where the.
Yep.
Okay.
The first option actually was the east one. Bolton Mink had put a walking trail through there with some stormwater quality things and like a pollinator garden and all that. And the two neighbors that were on the east and west side of that park came and spoke out pretty heavily against having that there. So then they shifted to this one that was just basically an empty lot.
Great. That makes me feel better that there was that conversation back then. So is anyone willing to make a motion on this?
I have a question.
Sorry.
That's right. Has this already been sent out to bid?
Nope.
Okay. So the numbers that I've seen are just kind of rough estimates.
Yep, they kind of need this agreement with the city before they can put it out to bid, because if there is no agreement to allow them onto public land and to do this work, then they really don't have a project to do. So it kind of this has to happen first before they can put it out to bid. I believe all the plans are complete, they're just kind of waiting on this agreement.
And then, so to clarify, so the city's portion would just be that trail and the bench?
Yep, and that'll come back to you. It's going to be bid as an alternate. So when that bid comes back, I will bring that back to you and say, this is how much that part of the project would be. Is the council fine, is the city fine with paying for that chunk of it? So it's not bid as a full project, it's separated out as an alternate, just to know what that cost is specifically for us.
Perfect, thank you.
Any other questions? If not, anyone interested in making a motion on this?
I'll make a motion to approve the North Shore Circle Park Shoreline Restoration Agreement.
We have a second?
I'll second it, sir.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Great. Number 7, this is our first regular agenda item, ordinance 749 multifamily zoning amendment, and Abby's gonna walk us through this.
Thank you, Mayor Roberts, members of the council. Currently, the city's zoning code's multiple family residential district indicates the multiple family residential district has a maximum density of 15 units per acre. We received a zoning ordinance text amendment from James McKinnon to change that to have a maximum density of 20 units per acre. And this is consistent with the comprehensive plan, which guides those multifamily future land use areas for 15 to 20 units per acre. So in addition to Mr. McKinnon's request, staff is also proposing that we kind of button up those minimum and maximum densities of 15 to 20 units per acre in the multifamily residential district. When the Planning Commission did take a look at this in February, they did vote 4-0 to recommend approval to your body for the ordinance amendment. Just for reference to the City Council, we always look to see for our text amendments that they're consistent with the comprehensive plan, there's no conflicts with the zoning code, and that there's a general public benefit to this request. And overall, when we can tie our zoning code back to our comp plan, which is really the guidance for our community, that's probably the best interest of the public. Additionally, for those that might not know, if there ever became a land use matter where there was a proposal in the multifamily district right now, but it was greater than 15 units per acre, the comp plan prevails. So the comp plan guidance from up to 20 units per acre would be the rule of law. So therefore, this is not only consistent with the comp plan, it's the benefit of fixing the zoning code. Those are all things that we want to do for the general benefit of the public. So before you tonight is ordinance number 749, which would change that a minimum density of 15 units per acre and a maximum density of 20 units per acre. And staff recommends you open the public hearing, take public comment, close the hearing, and then discuss. And after all discussion, staff recommends you move to adopt ordinance number 749, amending all of those words for section 153. 073 multifamily residential district. My Roman numerals are not great. It's just not my strong suit. Any questions?
Just one question.
Yep.
Just, I mean, we've been operating with a, code that says up to 15, and now we're putting a minimum on that. Does that hurt us in any way? I mean, is there, versus just saying, hey, it's gotta be up to 20, or it can be up to 20?
We're just making that minimum 15, maximum 20 for the consistency with the comp plan. I don't believe that this district would allow for single family or even those attached unit designs that would have densities. It's really designed for apartment structures.
Right, I'm gonna open a public hearing at 7:13. Is there anyone here to speak on amendment 749? Keep it open for just a couple more moments. Anyone interested in speaking on this amendment? Okay, 7:14, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to council for discussion. Any additional questions or thoughts, or? We have two veteran, or one real veteran planning commission member and one with a couple of years, so suspect if you guys are comfortable with it, and it was a 4-0.
We have discussed it quite a bit at length on the planning commission and stuff before. I think it's pretty solid.
I think it's important to make it more consistent. So if there's no objections, I would make a motion to adopt the ordinance number 749, amending Title 15, Land Usage, Chapter 153, Section 153.073, Multifamily Residential District, Section A, Purpose.
I'll second.
Great. First and a second, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we are 7B, North Shore Trail Design Considerations. And Ryan?
All right, Mayor, City Council, we'll just kind of recap last city council meeting on some items that we had the understanding that you might have been a consensus on, and then we'll go through some of those alternatives and hopefully have some final direction after tonight. So based on the February 24th meeting, here's some bullet points outlined. This kind of mimics, this presentation will mimic my memo in the council meeting agenda, so if you did read that, it's a lot of the same information here. So it was our understanding that we were going to remove all scope of work from the project, North Shore Trail from Greenway Avenue to 235th. Discuss alternative scopes of work on North Shore Trail from 235th, but general consensus was that we were going to include the original scope of work from 235th to 230, or Highway 97, which included the full pavement replacements. And then tonight, we would bring back additional design considerations for the city council and anticipated project schedule as presented. We still would assume that we're following that schedule moving forward. So tonight's the additional design considerations we'll talk about: lane width considerations, lane striping consideration, solar powered speed limit sign considerations. On reference guides that we look at when we are designing roadways or looking at safety features, here's a list of what we generally would look at. Some of them we would use depending on money source. Some of them we would use as a guide. Some of them are required depending on what you're doing. So just going through those reference standard summary and high level, I mean, there's pages, right, that go into this. This is really what we really need to take from that. So if we were using state aid dollars, you know, North Shore Trail is a state aid route, but we're not using state aid dollars, so we don't have to conform to their requirements, but we are still doing the same scope of work. We're reclaiming it. Minimum lane width would have to be 10 feet. Minimum shoulder width would be 2-foot gravel. Bike facilities, they recommend following Minnesota Bicycle Facility Design Manual. If we were fully reconstructing it, like we do plan on with the North Shore Dry portion from Highway 61 to Greenway, these are the minimum standards we're gonna have to meet on that design when you go into full reconstruction, which would require a lane width of minimum of 11 feet, minimum shoulder width 6-foot gravel, and still follow the same Bicycle Facility Design Manual. Minnesota Bicycle Facility Design Manual, minimum 4-foot paved shoulders width, 6 foot's preferred. Ideally provide paved shoulders on both sides of the streets. MnDOT paved shoulder info sheets, prioritize paved shoulders on both sides of the streets. Narrow paved shoulders is better than no paved shoulders. MnDOT local road research board, best practices for pedestrian and bicycle safety, provide paved shoulders on both sides of the two-way roads to discourage wrong way riding, biking. AASHTO bike guide, recommend minimum 4-foot paved shoulders, 5 foot if there's a guardrail or a vertical obstacle that's close. So take for instance, if I got something there, I'm not gonna be right up to it, right? I'm gonna probably be a foot off. So that's what that references throughout the presentation. FHWA, Federal Highway Administration Bikeway Selection Guide, preferred paved shoulders width for rural roadways based on speed limit and traffic volume, 5 to 8 feet for North Shore based on the traffic that we have there. Allows for minimum 3-foot paved shoulders, 5 foot of guardrail or other vertical obstructions or presence. So some of the typical.
Just a quick question. What's the current width of the lanes out there?
The current road is 30 feet width at the most on average. There's some pinch points throughout this corridor. Even with the new pavements, we're not gonna get a full 30 feet in width in some of the areas where some of the driveways were built pretty close up to the roadway or that area
once you go past the pizza place and they got that hill on that north side of the road, there's just nowhere to put the road any wider. So right now it's the 30 foot, 12-foot lanes, and would that make 3-foot shoulders at best case scenario? So,
All right, thank you.
well, that leads into the slide. Good lead in. So this is the existing section that's out there, ideally out there today. It's got the 12-foot striped lanes, 3-foot shoulders. So we just kind of did some pros and cons to each typical section. Obviously, there's other opinions that might have an additional pro or con, and that's certainly something we can bring up and talk about. This proposed matches the existing crown. That means the center of the road would be the high points, and it would equally shed water both directions, and 2.5% is our city standard on new pavements. It's important to have crown to get that snow and ice off the road and not be sitting on your pavement. So this matches the existing layouts. Uniform width allows bikes and peds on either side of the road. 12-foot lane allows for more space to pass around bikes and peds on the shoulder. Cons, obviously, we've heard some residents want wider shoulders or a trail, less than minimum standard shoulder width for bikes and peds. Vehicle speeding concerns remain with the 12-inch lane, and what I mean by that's when you allow a driver, just behavior-wise, a little more space to maneuver, they don't feel crowded or pinched or really think more about what's going down the corridor as they're traveling, especially as their speeds get high. So that's kind of a traffic calming engineering thing that is done. Thicker lines, squeeze them in, then they feel a little pinched a little bit, and mentally then they're thinking and having to slow down a little. Now, it doesn't work for everybody, but that's where you see like a lot of traffic calming techniques, whether it's with striping or even concrete curb and gutter in certain portions of roadways, they'll squeeze in certain areas.
Just, Mr. Mayor, if I might interrupt, just 12-foot lane, just so everyone's aware, is sort of the standard, right? I mean, 90% of the lanes out there that are, striped on roadways are 12-foot lanes. So just keep that in context, that is sort of the quote-unquote normal lane width.
On higher volume roads, your turn lane in the center would get wider than 12-foot sometimes too. So there's all design considerations based on traffic and type of road. Option 2, restripe the road down to 11-foot lanes, which would provide you a 4-foot shoulder. Here we would still maintain the center crown. We'd gain 1 foot on each side of the shoulder, meets minimum 4-foot shoulder width standards. Uniform shoulder width allows bikes and peds on either side of the road, and 11-foot lane could potentially slow traffic down. Cons, potentially complaints with narrow lanes, less than the preferred 5-foot shoulder width. So if you look at the 2 railings you guys got on the sides where you walk up and down from your dais there, that's about 4 feet. So if you stand in between, that's what it would feel like out on the road. So option 3, go down to a 10-foot lane, 5-foot paved shoulders. Existing crown here would stay the same, 2 foot wider on each side of the roads. You get that traffic calming effect, meets the shoulder widths allowed by bikes and peds on either side. Potential complaints about how narrow this road is. This would provide some challenges in some locations for garbage trucks, buses, and larger any delivery trucks that do drive down that corridor. Then to stay within that lane, uniformly through wherever they're driving. And if we do have somebody close biking or running, if a car has to swerve 1 foot over to feel comfortable, you potentially are in oncoming traffic too. So the skinnier the lane gets, that's some of the things to think about from a driver's behavior. Option 4, now we're looking at offsetting the crown of the road, which would require additional shaping, moving the material around with a grader after it's reclaimed in place to shift all that material over. Some of it might be lost in their bid somewhere, but if you're actually just calculating, a few more cost of the lineal foot of the project, this potentially could be around $70,000 for this shifting it 1 foot. with the amount of material that if you calced it out, but you're gonna be out there grading it anyways, so, somebody might bid something else a little different, and you don't actually see a price increase once you start playing around with the crown, just how they bid the project, because it's gonna be a lineal foot bid or a unit thing they'll have to do in the project regardless to shape it and, compact it before we pave it. But here, you shift the road 1 foot offsets, you then have your 11-foot lanes, you can obtain 3 foot on one side, 5 foot on another. Notice though that one side of the road is gonna have a flatter crown. So over time, that side is probably going to start developing more pavement issues than the other side, because just the crown, you're gonna get the water off the other side a lot better. So, and as the crown flattens out over time, that's where, a lot of your roads start to degrade faster, and that crown starts sinking just over time. A road starts moving around, settling down and getting flatter, and then you get the water being held on it versus getting it off. So that's some of the things to think about. Potentially there's some plowing issues when you got offset crown, but here's some of the things that would go into a 1 foot offset. Also looked at one roadway if you had a 2 foot offset and went down to a 2 foot paved shoulder on one side and 6 foot on the other, and maintain the 11-foot lanes. Obviously you get that one side that exceeds the 5 feet. You get a flatter slope, now you're less than 2%, and just in constructability of the work out there, unfortunately, sometimes you're not just gonna even hit that 1.9, you'll be flatter than that. So that's why we set the city standard at 2.5 on new paved roads. So when you take in the construction tolerance of a project, you might end up with a road that's just a little over 2% when it's all said and done in some spots. If they're trying to match into the existing curb, where lots of times we are, or they're got some other obstacles to work around, and utility boxes in the road or manholes and stuff like that. But with this, when you get a shoulder that wide out, shoulder that wide out in this area, we know pretty well, you might start inviting now parking in that area. That's another consideration to think about when we do get that wide. So there's just a lot of pros and cons that go into a lot of these options. So with that, I stand here and give you my recommendation. I would do the 11-foot lanes with the 4-foot shoulder option, maintaining the center crown where it is today, right in the center of the road, maximizing that cross slope at 2.5%. 4 foot is approximately with the railing widths that you got on both sides of the room. That would be equal on both sides. And why I give that recommendation to, just knowing that's what experienced bikers and runners do. Bikers are gonna always bike on the side of the road with the traffic. Runners are always gonna run towards traffic. So even if you had that 3 foot or 2 foot shoulder on one side and that really wide shoulder on the other side, they're still gonna use that side regardless. And I think that puts other people in more harm's way, especially if you got 2 trucks coming at each other and you had 2 foot here, and everything lines up in the perfect storm. You got the biker or the runner over here, you got that family here, and 2 trucks trying to get through. Something's gonna give in that situation, and that's why I look at this. And if even the experienced users are gonna be pretty sufficient with all the options, but it's that less experienced user that I'm trying to think about and protecting the most. Sometimes if you do give that wider shoulder, they might think they're safe, but in actuality, this is probably not a corridor for a non-experienced user. By providing that width over 4 feet, I think we're starting to invite larger groups to be sharing that side of the road together versus individual or a couple out for a walk, right? So that's how I land on this. I can keep going, or we can just nail this one out right now.
I like it.
Yeah. I think just even for like postal delivery and stuff like that, just to have some extra width for them folks to come out, I think is beneficial. I'd be curious just to see how many of them folks have gotten their cars hit by cars out there on North Shore Trail, because I know that's one of their favorites. They always say, this is the worst area for delivering is North Shore Trail for them.
And maybe I should put that snow plowing comment on, you know, the cons that I had earlier, like, you're like, why would that bother snow plowing? Well, if you have the road offset, right, and they're gonna hit that center line, right, but they might not get enough of the driving lane, because you got so much more wire to push on that side, and probably gonna have to take 2 passes to do what they used to be able to do in 1. Obviously, the skinnier side, they're probably gonna be able to easily get in 1, so that was kinda, some of that comment related to the snowplow situation, where I'm offsetting the road, leaving much wider pavement on one side with the same truck that we're using on the other side of the road, right? But definitely let me know now. Keep discussing, or give me the nod to move on.
Any questions or comments for Ryan on this?
No, as I read through this over the weekend, option 2 seemed to make the most sense to me.
Ryan, in my head, I'm not clear, so I just want to be clear. Are you thinking, or are we talking about this 11-foot lanes and 4-foot, or I'm sorry, the 4-foot shoulders on the entire road from Greenway to 97?
From
Or are we-
235th to Highway 97.
Okay. Provided, or if we're not doing anything with the first part of the road.
It's my understanding that that portion of the project has been removed. And that's why I did make the first slide of some of those assumptions based off our last meeting.
I think just to be clear, that was the consensus. I don't know that there was a vote, and we
There was,
should probably.
Yeah.
there was no votes.
Yeah, there was no
Included in any
vote.
motion tonight should be either eliminate or don't eliminate that section, but I think that was the general consensus we got from the last meeting.
So that's my point. My understanding was we were just gonna talk about it, and it wasn't removed at this point. And I think we should go back and talk about it as you look at the cost of that Greenway to 235th and the actual feasibility, or the actual, I guess, safety and, you know, just, are we really sure we wanna put a trail on that road? I mean, I think it's dangerous. I think there's not enough room. I think there's too many things we have to do to make it work. We can't even tie in the trail system with any of the other trails because none of those neighborhoods are developed yet that are gonna tie the trail system in. So I'm not sure if we should put that on hold or not, or should we just build the road as option 2 is the whole way at this time? I mean, I've talked to a few citizens and none of them are really in favor of it. They're not making an issue out of not having it. And, you know, at the meeting that I attended, there were a few people that talked about it, but it didn't seem like it was an overwhelming yes that we should do it. And it seems like an awful lot of money for the city to pay for something that probably is not really, we're not really ready for it yet. Just my thoughts.
Any additional thoughts on that?
I'd probably agree with Kevin on that. I think the cost of moving utilities, cutting trees, land acquisition and stuff like that, I don't think people really understand the totality of all that's involved in that from Greenway to 235th.
I think that, you know, when we were, at the last meeting, kind of the idea there was that it doesn't hurt to take a pause for 2 years or 3 years on that stretch, knowing we're gonna be back in that area with a larger project on the North Shore Drive piece of it. So do you explore it, find out what those real hard costs are, what it would cost to take land, and again, I agree, there's a lot there that has to be done. But this is part of our Parks and Trails comp plan to go out there. So I don't see any harm in hitting the pause on that and really vetting this out to see if whether or not we can do this. As I said in the last meeting, we might land right where we were back last May when we made the decision not to do this, or there could be some money grants, something to do something to offset some of this cost. I agree it's a lot, but I think that mile stretch, if we weren't having another large project coming in and couldn't add that to this next, to this portion, I'd be less willing to put the pause button on this, but I feel it's worth vetting out. Any other
I
thoughts?
think I'd prefer to pause too. I know when for the last election cycle, a lot of the comments I received were about connectability within the city. And so I think, even though we don't know the cost, but we would assume that the cost for putting a trail from Greenway to 235th would be a lot. I just think a pause would be beneficial just to see what that would look like and what the scope would be, and then just get the citizens' feedback at that point.
I think the other benefit, if this were to come forward or come through, we would have then potential trail all the way from one of our furthest east parks, which is Camp, all the way to downtown. Also then connecting to that new Swedish immigrant trail that's gonna run up 8. I think there's some value there for people. And so that was the reasons why I paused. And again, we may, and probably most likely will end up exactly where we are tonight, where we're concerned about the cost. But at least we have those hard numbers and we know, like, no, this is a hard no, because we can tell the public it's gonna cost. I think we had gotten an estimate of $6 million to do trail and road from just that 1 mile stretch, right? So it's a lot. But to know the exact numbers and to just have more conversation with the community about that, I think this might be the right time to just.
Mayor, if I could add too, I think one of the things that we'd like to do in the pause is explore grant opportunities. We think this trail connection makes a good story for connecting to these other regional trails. Generally, that's what MnDOT and other agencies are looking for when they're looking at grants is there some larger regional benefit? It's not just a local trail connecting to local neighborhoods, it's connecting a park to a regional trail and that kind of thing. So that's another thing we'd prefer to do in the pause. Certainly all good points, valid points about, construction costs generally outpace inflation. 2 years, this is $1 million we're deleting. Will it be $1.2 million 2 years later? Maybe. We're gonna bond for this project though too, and our interest rate's real favorable right now. Maybe not, maybe they'll be down 2 years from now. Maybe they'll be up, who knows? But it's all very difficult to say what's, hindsight's always 20/20, right? But I do think there's an opportunity here to pause and just do a little bit more community engagement. I felt like the tenor at the meeting was all pretty much folks thankful that we're doing something, but also some hesitation like, oh gosh, you mean you're gonna do this and not do a trail? And again, I'd kind of go back to that idea that if we do what the original scope was, that's a 20-year commitment. We're not coming back, no ifs, ands, or buts about it in the next 20 years, just because that would be financial suicide, right? I mean, they're just, now you're stacking $6 million on top of $1 million worth of investment, right? So I think that was the tough part for me to come to grips with, that 20 years is a long time. Talked about some of the development to the east not being developed yet. Certainly true. If those developments come in the next 5 years, we're gonna go, yeah, darn it, we should have maybe done this, right? So there's no right or wrong answer, and I don't mean to besmirch anyone's position here, but those are the thought processes that I had.
Yeah, I agree. My original recollection was if we pause it, it would be a longer period of time than a couple of years.
Yeah, what is, in the CIP, when is that?
I believe we have it 2028, but it would totally be dependent on when Highway 8 schedule actually occurs, because if we were to have North Shore Drive tore up, not drivable, and Highway 8 tore up, not drivable, that puts a lot of residents and some business owners in not the ideal condition, and it really presents challenges for public safety if we have to. So that's why we were gonna piggyback behind the Highway 8's project, but with their environmental project development, it keeps been pushing the project that they're working through, so they don't have it 100% firm down yet.
So 2028 comes fast.
Yeah, well, yeah. And our road will hold up,
It'll take probably some, annual patching that Public Works does on your local roadways. That's, they're gonna probably find spots they'll have to deal with.
We'll have the other 6 miles of this project or whatever that we won't have to patch.
Right.
That'll be,
Right.
kind of a trade-off too, right?
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
So we are looking for a formal motion on this to,
I think it would be appropriate if you wanted to split it up into two motions to decide whether or not to include the Greenway to 235th and then a separate motion on the lane widths. You can do
Then
that.
I've got two more
Oh.
things to discuss tonight too.
yeah, that's, okay.
So,
Sorry, you have the,
No, it was a nice day, but the sun's already set. Come on, we can be here all night now, right? Just kidding. All right, the second consideration was the lane striping. So, this type of road, obviously will have that that fog line, that white fog line on the side of the road, and there's some information in here. I just included why they put it. Typically with our local roadways, it's a 4-inch, width. However, with the additional design considerations, we propose to paint it 6 inches, a little wider fog lines, such as the 6 inches are safer than the 4-inch, just because it helps the driver see the lane boundaries and the road alignments, and it'll help, I believe, provide some of that traffic calming as well. On top of that, cost difference between the 4-inch and 6-inch is approximately 50 cents a linear foot, so that's about $25,000 from 235th to Highway 97. It would be painted epoxy, so ideally that would last 5 years, versus if we went out and did latex, you would be back having to keep up with latex every year. Once you put epoxy down, typically you don't put epoxy on top of epoxy. Then you come with that latex in the future, just because there's nothing to really hold to unless you got some really good areas out there still. But original, new pavements, we typically will go stripe epoxy striping, so. This is what I'm referring to, that white line along the road, and recommending to go with a 6-inch solid white fog line. The last design consideration is powered speed limit signs. There is currently one out there right now, about 600 feet east of Greenway, heading westbound. So if you were coming towards Greenway, you will see this sign, and it'll flash at you what your speed is. So obviously, I think these have been that's been successful out there. You know, studies prove they're successful in driving behavior. They are approximately $12,000 to $15,000 with the proposed sign with the base break-off sign. My recommendation will be 4 of them, 2 eastbound to be added and 2 westbound. We'd work with Public Works on final locations. Just make sure we're not getting in the way of anything from a snow plowing situation or other reasons. So that would be about $60,000 added to the project. And these are what they look like. So recommendation would be to install 4 more of those between 235th and Highway 97, 2 westbound, 2 eastbound. The one on the left is the one that's out there today. The one on the right is actually just installed over in Scandia. So now in conclusion, now we can make some motions or have additional discussions, and I can go back to any slides you want, but scope of work, lane width consideration, lane striping consideration, solar power, speed limit sign consideration are what we're looking for on final direction tonight.
all right, thanks. So we talked through the other 2 things, the lane and potentially the pause, the lane shift, but then the new things here, the lane striping and then the solar powered speed limit signs. Any thoughts on that or questions on those?
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense to have that 6-inch line for the reasons you laid out. And then as far as the solar-powered speed limit signs, I would be in favor of that. I mean, some people may ignore them anyway, but I think it's just another visual reminder that people need to slow down. And so I think it'd be worth the investment.
Can we install cameras on them and issue tickets?
A lot of change with that going on in some places right now. That'll be a legal question.
So in some of the feedback from the neighbors or the people that attended, the concern was the speed based on now you have that basically Oregon Trail road out there that's rough and people, it's an automatic, the whole thing's a speed bump. It's about an 8-mile speed bump, and having that nice pavement, it is gonna increase the speeds there. So I think having these solar powered limit signs, speed limit signs would help at least slow down a little, some of the people.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree, for sure.
Obviously, a little additional money there, but I think it's well worth it. Any other questions or thoughts on the whole project in general?
One last one. Ryan, is the center line made out of the same as the sideline stripes?
The original striping will be double yellow
Okay.
epoxy paint.
Epoxy.
Oh, so two different, I guess, recommended is two different motions. One would be whether or not we pause on Greenway to 235th, and then the second one would be the lane with considerations, the striping and the solar-powered speed limit. So, anyone interested in making a?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion that we remove from this year's scope of work that section of roadway from Greenway to 235th with the intention of coming back and doing that section with the next sequence project in that area.
A second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So then this next motion, if anyone's willing to make, it would be on, again, the lane striping considerations and the solar-powered speed limit signs.
Go ahead, you got the right.
I'll make a motion that we move forward with the recommended option number 2, which provides for 11-foot drive lane, remain the current crowns, leaving a 4-foot rider ped lane from 235th to Highway 97, also to include the 6-inch lane striping as recommended, and including the 4 solar-powered speed limit signs.
All right, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Great, thanks, Ryan. All right, 7C, Lakeside Ice Heaving Project Approval. Dave?
Fix the road, now we'll fix the shoreline. As most of you are aware, the ice heaving that happened along Lakeside Park this winter, I don't know if you've been out there lately, it's come down some, so it's not quite as impressive at all. The frost has come out of the ground, but we did get quotes from a contractor, a local contractor, who can kind of do electric, do the gas, do the grading, do everything, and they actually were the company that originally put Lakeside Park in back in 2005. We used them for an estimate to file a claim with the League of Minnesota Cities. They did approve spending up to, I believe it was $23,100 of that total cost would be covered. We are also going after AIRS coverage for the riprap boulders. What that means is they can be covered, and we're basically saying we didn't know that we didn't have them covered, so we want to see if we can still get coverage, and you'd basically backdate your policy back to September, and you'd have to weigh out what that policy costs versus what the repairs cost. And if the insurance is less, then you would pick up that premium. If it's more, then you would just pay for it out of the hand. It's in underwriting, so we don't have an answer back on that yet. But they approved the contract. They said we could go out and get other bids, but it's competitive with what they review. So if we choose, we can go get additional bids, but they approved Forest Lake Contracting's work at their cost. The big thing here is the sidewalk or that paver path. I said 350 feet. I think that's worst case scenario. It could be shorter than that. It's all gonna depend on once the ground completely settles down and how far we're gonna have to remove back. And there's just some high spots, especially where those light poles are tipped over. That path itself moved over and went up in the air, so there's gonna be some spots. I think, I didn't wanna shock you, but I wanted to say this is the worst case, right? This is if we go all the way back to that perforated drain kind of by the swing set and had to replace all that all the way out to the boat launch. After looking at it and looking at it with the contractor, I don't think we're gonna have to do that much, and maybe half of that. I just don't wanna say we're only gonna do 100 feet and then I have to come back and say, oh, whoops, I missed 200 feet of it. So just kind of telling you this is worst case scenario if it has to go all the way back. So that's, I just went and got those two costs, just trying to see if we could find that cost savings. I assumed that paving it back in would be cheaper just because I know by having to put it all back by hand was gonna cost more, which is true. So it's about half the cost, relatively half the cost to pave it back in. So I'm really kind of looking for discussion on that, or picking an option of what you would like to do with that trail, and if you have any other questions about the bid itself or the process or anything in general about this project.
So I had asked staff, if some of you recall, we do have a shoreline plan there, but really I don't even know if we have any funding for it, and maybe just a little bit of history about that, and maybe some estimated pricing. The idea is that, do we want to make this back to where it was, or do we want to make it so it's usable this summer, potentially do the larger project that is going to happen at some point, supposedly, and how do we think about that, and if we want to wait and just get it so it's flat, and then if that's the case, then maybe it is the bituminous, instead of putting those pavers back down until, and maybe you can save most of those pavers and reinstall them when the final project, when we do a long-term project.
So up on the screen, this is the zoomed in version of the concept that came about that was last year, correct?
Yeah.
I believe it's on the Capitol. I can't remember which year. You think it's 26?
I do think that we had it at the Capitol for 26.
So I'll scroll down. That was just assumed in the budget. This is what the estimated budget was, if you can, is that big enough?
1.8,
2.3 range.
1.3.
So that was the estimated cost of that picture that you saw. The tricky part is, can't really tell if you're gonna use part of that existing trail. If you're not, it kinda shows maybe in this area that might get used, but then it curves up it. So the concept was, more of a artistic drawing versus construction plan, so it's hard to tell exactly if that paver trail's gonna be salvaged or it's all gonna get torn out anyway. I don't know. It's all gonna go? Okay, so it's all gonna go at that point.
Yeah, because I think over on the left-hand side, you've got all those major boulders or rocks coming in there, and that would definitely overlap where the current trail is.
So was the idea in 26, if this is on the CIP, to fund this through levy dollars? Is that?
I don't know how that was plugged in there.
I don't remember either, and I unfortunately locked myself out of my computer right before the meeting. And so we'd have to double check to see, but something made me think that we did put this in for 26 for the stabilization of the shoreline. Of the almost 4, we did estimate the shoreline stabilization was about 800,000 of that, but that is with that boulder design. As the council may remember, some direction was provided to go and talk with the DNR about that shoreline design. Since the project or the damage that's occurred in the spring, I have chatted with our water coordinator at the DNR about, again, looking at almost like a seawall design, some sort of, pile driving in. They're not favorable to that design. Now, that being said, I have asked the question, is there the opportunity to build a wall and backfill with sand, plant material, vegetation, so you have that natural shoreline appearance? I didn't get a yes, but I got that's a different conversation. And so I think, between now and as our conversations kind of keep going in terms of what do we do here, I think that there's opportunities in the near future to find and settle on a design that works for the city, works for the community, works for the DNR. But those costs are going to be pretty significant. Are they going to come down a ton from 1.4 if we build a seawall? Probably not. But it might come down some if we took out that kind of stacked big boulder design. And built a true wall, really designed to kind of help prevent that heaving in the future. I will also note, we did talk with Bruce Chamberlain of Talahi, who developed the design. He does not have any concrete examples where the stacked boulder design that was proposed has been utilized. So it would be a test scenario if we ended up going with that design. It looks really cool. But that's not to say that it wouldn't potentially, we're not convinced, we don't have the assurance that it would stop future heaving in the long run.
Would the idea, Dave, on redoing the trail and pushing, we would remove the rock, what we have there, push, flatten it out, and then bring the rock back in place?
It would be resetting, so salvaging all the rocks, so they'd pick them all out and set them on shore. They'd regrade the entire shoreline, lay fabric down, and then reset all the rocks back in how they should be, about 4 feet farther down on the ground and out. So they'd regrade it as the original grading plan was, bring it back to that same shoreline.
And so I apologize if I missed that, so I saw the difference on the trail, but what's the total, then what is the total price to do that, plus?
The base bid is 119,000.
It's on page
Is it on there?
106.
119,965.
And that is including the trail?
That would do
That-
everything minus the trail, so the trail is the one, that would be the allowance or the add-on. And it's just bid at a square footage, so as much as they would take, then that's what you would pay for a square foot. So for reference, that's it's 330, 350 would get you almost back to that swing set. There's a perforated drain towel that comes out right here in the sunk there, and then that's when it all starts kind of getting a little wonky. The salvaging, if you did go with the blacktop trail, they would salvage all the personalized ones. So it's pretty thick between here and the public dock, and then it gets pretty sporadic for the rest of it. There's some on the edges, but that would be part of that deal, that they would make sure they salvage. We could find a different place in the park where we could replace them, maybe the new Veterans Memorial, when that goes up to have the place to add them into. So that if we did go with the blacktop option, that at least those would be salvaged and figured out where to use somewhere else in the park.
Any additional questions or thoughts?
I have a couple. You know, those pavers that are there now, they were donated, funds were donated for those pavers to go in, right, to build that walkway. Is it something that we could go to the community and see if we could do something like that again to repair the shoreline? As an option, maybe we could get citizens to donate again towards that rebuilding. The rocks, what I've learned by my shoreline, which is destroyed again, like a lot of people's, the bigger the rocks, the more damage it causes, and it's harder to fix it. And so most of the people come out and they recommend the smaller stones because they're easier to grade out and replace versus those great big boulders, which they have to bring in heavy equipment every time to fix them. And the big boulders move just as easy as little ones. It doesn't matter how big those rocks are. When that ice is gonna move them, it moves them. And I don't even know if a wall could stop it, to be honest with you. So my recommendation would be not to put in the big boulders, it would be to use smaller ones. And it seems like the DNRs, when I've talked to them, the only thing that really helps hold those shorelines in places is plantings, whether it be grasses, whether it be roots, whether it be, you know, anything. But as soon as that's all gone, if there's nothing there other than sand or rocks, it's gonna move. And we could fix it and it's gonna look beautiful, and next year could do it again, no matter what. I mean, I've lived on a lake since 2009, and I fix my shoreline, I think, every year. and now it's pushed up another 4 feet. I mean, I don't know what the secret is, but maybe there's some way we could get the community involved to help repair that instead of just us taking on that whole burden again. The community enjoys that park, the community uses that park, maybe there's something we can do, just as a thought.
So the-
Slab rock seemed to work a little better than just a regular round rock.
For
I replaced slab with larger slabs at a 45, and it didn't seem to destroy it as bad as some of the area where I had the bigger rocks. So I don't know, as far as like the ice hitting it and riding up more versus just jamming it into the shore and pushing all of it, rocks right into the dirt. So I don't know if
So
that's
does
helpful.
does the bid include adding additional rocks or using the the existing
So
rocks?
I'm trying to
So-
do this as cheap as possible,
Right.
knowing that in 2026, we're probably removing this and doing something different. So, and I'm also just trying to roll the dice, figuring in 20 years, we never had this happen, and what's the chance we're gonna get it in another, year or two? Typically, we get heaving and Public Works will run their track hoe down there and we'll just reset them. It just is just way above our pay grade because it's heaved up way too much, but we get heaving every year, which we just go and grade and knock down. But I mean, if we switch to different rocks, then we're paying them to get rid of these, we're buying new rocks, we're trying to design how to set them in. I'm trying to fix it, make it a
Yeah.
good park for the summer, but I'm also trying not to break the bank here, because I know it's something we didn't plan for, and we're just trying to make it look nice, so. that's
Can
what I'm-
we move forward on the contract and maybe just a little bit, we've got a little time here, but a little more conversation around the trail? Do you think that would be possible, as to maybe Kevin's idea there of sponsorships, or what the desire of maybe the park boards, now we have a place what their desire is, or maybe those pavers can all be reclaimed and be part of the Veterans Memorial, not just the signature ones, but all of it, or a big portion of it. I mean, it is a nice look, it's a nicer trail, but I do know there's constantly weeds in there, and it's additional work for Public Works too, to have those pavers there.
Yes, I mean, given the time frame and knowing that we want to have the park available for the summer, it's a heavily used park. My preference, knowing that we've got a bigger vision for this space, would be to just move forward with the less expensive trail option. Approve the contract so that that place gets put back together. And then, to your point, as we move into that next phase, maybe there's an opportunity there. Because the last thing I'd want to do is go to the public and say, hey, help us fix this, and then 3 years later be like, guess we're going to rip it all apart. That's not a very good look. But I think there's a real opportunity that people, probably would enjoy being a part of that.
I agree.
So, the earliest work can get done there would be the 24th of March, because we're waiting on the DNR permit, and they're sending out notice of decisions to all the watersheds and all the TEP panel basically for review. So we could if you want to sit on it and think about it, we can wait till the 24th to give direction at least on that piece, or if we want to make a decision now, then we can get them lined up. I even spec this in with sod, knowing that same thing about a heavily used park, because I don't think we have time for seed to establish. We need to get sod in there and get it growing, and for people running on it. Otherwise, that will be shut down all summer long to try to get grass to grow. It's kind of we gotta get it fixed, and we gotta make it so people can use it too, and trying to do it as cheap and quick as possible.
Yeah, Councilmember Erickson brings up a good point there. I think I would be fine with that. It would be nice, though, for those ones that are memorialized, or to at least have a location somewhere for them this year. Maybe it's all together, where there's a cutout where the sod is or something, and people paid money for those, and they like to go down the park, and you never know, that family might not be in town for another couple of years, all of a sudden they come down there and they're not seeing that loved one in the park. That wouldn't be a good look either. So, we need a motion then, correct?
Correct, yep.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion to approve the Lakeside Park repairs with Forest Lake Contracting to include base bid allowances in option number 2, to remove the pavers and replace with the 10-foot bituminous trail at a cost of approximately $45,000. And I'll also add to that that with the intention of having those customized or private pavers relocated somewhere in the park.
I'll second.
First and a second, any additional discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Right, 7D, proposed lease for 8th District Congressional Office at City Hall. Amanda?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor, Council. If you recall, I believe it was at the last, maybe 2 meetings ago, we discussed Councilmember Stauber's office reaching out to the mayor and inquiring about possibly renting some space at City Hall for a district office. Since that time, I have met with 2 representatives from Councilmember Stauber's office. One is in the audience tonight, Ben De La Forest, and I'll let him get up and speak here in a second if he'd like. No pressure either way. And they looked at the place upstairs, the Shields Lake conference room. It is very minimally used currently and would be a great fit for what they're looking for. They were very excited about what we had to offer here. I have a lease in the packet for your consideration. I'm waiting to hear back from Councilmember Stauber's office, specifically the Office of Administration for Congress needs to approve the lease, and that has not come back yet. Key terms of this lease are that it would be starting potentially tomorrow if we can hear back from their office that quickly. It does, as I mentioned before, the lease does need to end at the end of this term for the Congress, so that would be January 2nd of 2027. Any future congressman or congresswoman in that chair would have the opportunity to also rent this space from us, irregardless of party. This is not a political thing. This is not a campaign office. This is strictly a district office, provided that that space was still available. The monthly rent is right now proposed to be $1 a month, and that is because the county assessor, I spoke with the county assessor, and they said that in order to protect our tax exempt status, we can either charge no rent or de minimis rent. After speaking with a representative from the congressman's office, he thought that we needed to have $1 in there at least, so that's where that amount came from. And then we also needed to provide them with password protected Wi-Fi, which we do have, and we'll turn over that password to them once the lease is approved, assuming the lease is approved. The Congress staff member would not have access to any of the secured locations within the City Hall. It would just be access to the front door, the public spaces, and then also to Shields Lake conference room. That would be turned into their office if they want to move different furniture into there or rearrange the furniture currently in there, which is a conference table. They could do so. Let's see if there's anything else I wanted to tell you. I think that's it. Just a reminder of the benefits for why the city was considering to do this. It's probably pretty obvious, but having access to a representative of the congressman here within the city hall is great for the people who live here because they'll be able to hold meetings with individuals in the city very easily and the surrounding area. In addition, just exposure. Obviously, again, tonight, Mr. De La Forest was here, so he could hear some of the issues that are that the city is facing, and just having that sort of front connection, I think, is very, frankly, almost priceless to the city. I don't know how you quite put a value on that. So those are the reasons that the city was considering it to begin with, and those continue to be the reasons to do so. I am available for questions. If Ben wants to get up and say a few words and introduce himself, I think that would be great, and then I can kind of direct you on the motion because I am asking you to approve the lease subject to minor modification as approved by myself, just so that way if the the administrative office comes back with some sort of a tweak that they need to the lease, we can just do that administratively and get that going.
Great. So before I will he'll come up, just before you that though, any questions the council has? So, Mr. De La Forest, welcome.
All right, well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, Congress members. Hello, my name is Ben De La Forest. So my first day with Congressman Stauber was today. So I'm very happy to be working with the congressman in the 8th Congressional District for Minnesota, the largest in Minnesota, and more than happy to be in Forest Lake. My official job title is the Southern Field Representative for Congressman Stauber. So I run the 6 southern counties within the 8th district. But obviously, we want to have more emphasis where most of the people are within this area, and that's right in Forest Lake. My job is constituent services, as well as federal questions that constituents may have, along with our stakeholders in the area. So again, like Amanda was saying, there's no campaign side to this. This is purely constituent services and helping out the people within the area however we can do so.
Great. Any questions for Ben?
Thank you, Ben.
We appreciate it, and it's great to meet you, and hope to see your face around quite a bit at City Hall. So,
Yeah, absolutely. If you guys ever have any questions, I can leave you my phone number as well as my email. I will be more than happy to be available to you all. So it was really great to meet you guys. Happy to be here and happy to be a part of everything. So thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. I guess I just have one question, and maybe this is for Jolene. Just based on, I think we do voting up there. There's an election. That's where the voting takes place in that room. Is there any issues there? Would they have to vacate, even though it's not an election, an office? Any concerns there?
I think we'll have to kind of play that by ear as we're approaching our next election, and I can work closely with Ben on that. If there's concerns from the election judges that they might need access to that room, or it just might be, congestion issue, we can work with Ben and maybe switch his office hours for that day, and perhaps he doesn't even hold office hours on election days, so that's kind of frequent in some political subdivisions, so.
Any other questions or thoughts or comments? Again, and Amanda alluded to this really is nonpartisan. This would be open to any, regardless of Democrat, Republican, Independent, we would offer this space. And so I welcome it, and I think it's going to be great for the city and the residents. And so I would move that we approve the proposed lease for the 8th District Congressional Office at City Hall. Can I get a second?
Second.
You want to amend that to include it being subject to minor modifications as approved by the city attorney?
Yes, friendly amendment. Okay. All right, is there a second then? You second it. All right, any discussion?
Just quick discussion point. We had looked at other leases, and on some of those leases, Amanda, they showed compensation that was greater than $1. And so I guess I'm taken back a little bit that, some of those numbers showed as much as $2,500 a month, and now we're talking about $1.
There was one for, I think it was $2,300 for the
23.
year.
Oh, okay.
And then one was, I think, $500 a month.
Oh,
Was the
500,
other
yeah.
one. And yes, I don't have a good answer for why those cities did that, other than I'm guessing they didn't call their assessor and the county assessor, and I'm also not sure how they would have reported it on their taxes in terms of, or just how they would have reported that with the county. Perhaps, from a full transparency perspective, I think it was important to reach out to the county and confirm, because what would be frankly horrible is if they found out the backdoor way and then they try to take our tax exempt status, and then that's a pretty nasty fight.
Makes sense.
Right. Okay, so we have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we are, so this is the additional item, the resolution for support of the County Road 32 Forest Road realignment. Mark?
Very happy to have Ben in the audience for this one. This is great.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Mayor and Council, what's in front of you tonight is a resolution of support that may look familiar to some of you. It was in front of you about a year ago this time. We just received notice from the Congressman's office that the quote-unquote window for this congressionally directed spending is opened very recently, and it will close, I believe, on Wednesday or Thursday of this week. And so there was a request as to whether or not we wanted to continue our ask here on this particular project. And working with the county folks on this one, they asked if we could get a resolution of support and a letter of support. And, you know, just so happened we had a council meeting tonight, so don't like to put items on the agenda and surprise you with them. That's certainly not my modus operandi, but given the schedule and given the dollar amounts here we're talking about, it felt appropriate to put this in front of you tonight. So, you know, just to review the project here, this is County 32, Ryan, from Highway 61 west to, what's the western limit?
Not quite all the way to Eureka, but in between Eureka and 12th.
Okay.
12th Street Southwest.
And then, regardless of the realignment of Forest Road, the city would have a share in this project. I believe it was estimated around 1.8 to
1.9 million, and that does not include right-of-way acquisition, engineering, construction administration, inflation, and we will have some city sanitary and water work. And if we want to do lighting again, that'll be another conversation we need to have.
So there's a $2-ish million project cost here, regardless of any realignment of Forest Road. And having that realignment of Forest Road, when that was discussed at several public meetings, I believe there was 5 public meetings held, so there's a lot of community input here. And the result of that community input was that the public favored this sort of realignment to shift Forest Road's intersection over a block, essentially, and which eliminates the need for a right-in, right-out restriction on that intersection. And that action and the hardship that involves for the city kind of prompted this idea to go seek funding elsewhere, because the city just doesn't have that kind of funding in our pocket at the moment. So that was the ask from last year, was to request that funding from the federal government to assist with the city's share of that project. Overall, the total project cost for the city would come down with that appropriation. And so staff's recommendation is to continue this ask in 2025, and again to fund the city's portion of the realignment of Forest Road. So I don't know if Ryan, if you have any other comments on the project as a whole? Or?
So the county is gonna match their previous ask, which was 9 million. That would go towards Forest Road construction and right-of-way, and then the remaining funds would be taken off the top of the whole entire project. So in essence, that would buy down our local share of the numbers I just shared with you.
And so, Mr. Mayor and Council, what we would be asking for you tonight is to approve the resolution in front of you and authorize the letter of support that's been drafted, the draft letter for you. If you have, of course, amendments to that resolution or to the draft letter, we would certainly take those, but otherwise it's, I think, Jolene, just identical to last year's with updating the dates. And
Correct.
Okay, thanks. Do we have, you know, we were told in the past that we would learn the outcome of this in March, and here it is March. So this additional ask, does that back up, and should we hear relatively soon if these funds are gonna be available, or any idea there?
Yeah, so the conversation started, I reached out to the county if we could set up some separate time to bring Administrator Stotts up to speed on this project, and then we got this email today. They just found out Friday that Starbucks is looking to reopen the congressionally directed spending portal for new submittals. So now we're resubmitting. I don't know what that entirely means. If our old one is not valid anymore, we need to resubmit it to make it current. But they needed an updated letter of supports they requested one from the city and one from the chamber, and then the resolution of support too. So that's where we're at. This all just has happened in the last, well, since this morning for us.
Any other questions or discussion on this, or thoughts?
Support.
Anyone willing to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 03102502, a resolution of support requesting congressionally directed spending funds for Washington County's County State Aid Highway 32 pedestrian and safety improvement project, along with the letter of support.
Second?
Second, all right. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we are at staff updates, and we'll start with Jolene.
No updates this evening, Mayor.
Abby?
I just have a couple for you. Included on the dais tonight is an EDA 2024 annual report. I don't think that that's necessarily something that had been being reported back to the council, certainly not in maybe kind of the format that it is, but a new thing, so take a look at that. Really highlights not only the EDA's activities, but just in general, some of the development that happened in Forest Lake in 2025. Plan on updating that annually, so you start to see those trends, and always just kind of upward, I think. Are trying to schedule a joint workshop between the EDA and the City Council for the first week in April, or just the first part of April. I recognize I should have given you a heads up to bring your calendars with you. I did hear from the EDA that there are 2 dates that work better, Monday, April 7th or Thursday, April 10th, but we do acknowledge that there is a conflict of interest with the Thursday night meetings in our local Lions Club. So I guess if folks have their calendars available, I'm just wondering if you've got some availability or know your availability Monday, April 7th or Thursday, April 10th. Looks like Jeff is
I'm
open
open on
both days.
I'm open on the 7th.
Hannah, you want to get back to me?
I'm most likely open. Usually I
Okay.
keep my Mondays open.
So maybe what we'd probably do is just set it right now tentatively for the 7th. I'll send out a calendar invite for everyone. Sounds like there's a majority of the council, a majority of the EDA that's available that night. Time TBD, but the goal of that joint workshop is really to discuss some higher level items, specifically related to Headwaters 123, but then in general, EDA work plan and kind of where the body's gonna kind of be going in the next maybe 18 to 36 months.
That's great.
That's all I got. Thank you.
Dave, anything else for us tonight?
Tomorrow is the Public Works Facility Space Needs Study Tours, so we'll be looking at City of Ramsey and the City of Hugo Public Works Facilities tomorrow. Councils that attending meet here at 12:15 at the City Center, and we will go from there. Second item is Parks and Rec Commission is meeting for the first time next week, first time in a long time, so Kyle's been putting a lot of topics together. He's raring to go. He wanted to see if he could go till midnight, the first night. Told him to calm her down. Let's just get him into some introductions and wait for at least the second meeting. So he's excited. It'll be good to have a group together. There's a lot of development, a lot of policy work, a lot of stuff that has kind of been shelved for a while. So we'll be catching up and putting some time in. That's it.
Great. Ryan, anything for us tonight?
Mayor, City Council, just a few things to update. Last Tuesday, public open house for a pre-construction meeting was held for Broadway by the Washington County. I think 3 residents showed up for that meeting, so not obviously the turnout they wanted, but they are gonna still plan on going door to door to all the businesses there, just to have that one-on-one connection. I think they anticipated, depending on weather does and everything, but construction is starting in April, and they plan to be done June 15th or second week in June with that project, so that'll give us plenty of time before 4th of July. This Thursday is the Bells Park bid opening, and then tomorrow nights, we have the MnDOT Highway 97 Public Open House, 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. upstairs in the community center. So that'll be interesting to see the turnout for that. It's been a little while since they've had a public meeting, but it'll definitely generate a lot of questions with that project. So, but hopefully people that do come have been to the several open houses that we've had over the years, so with that one. And I think you all seen that aerial flyover computer-generated project, right? So that was a good tool that MnDOT put together too. That's all I got.
So when is the projected start again? Is that May, or I guess the bigger question, when would that be completely shut down? Would the project on Broadway be done before they're completely shut that, or do we not know that?
Last I heard, they plan on doing lane closures the beginning of June with Highway 97, so there would be at least a week overlap, if not two, with the construction projects, but at that stage, that would be the final stage. Washington County would be with Broadway, so it would be open to traffic both lanes. It might be restricted lane, but traffic both lanes would be open by June already.
Amanda, anything else for us tonight?
No updates.
And Mark, anything?
Just a couple of things. This week, we are interviewing for a couple of open positions, one at the Public Works Department and one in our Building Department. And then next agenda for our work session, we're gonna try to bring a staffing discussion back to you about some of the department head positions that are open and have a little bit better picture for you where we're heading in that direction and in that regard to overall staffing. So we're eager to get that moving and get some of those positions filled that have been vacant for a bit of a time here. I also want to just report that we had a very nice meeting with AFSCME, the union for our folks in various places in our organization here, and I think we have a tentative agreement worked out with them. And MAPE, the union, will be negotiating with them this Wednesday and are hoping again for a similar outcome, and hope that we can bring those agreements back to you soon to get, it is March now, it's time to get those agreements wrapped up, right? So we're eager to do that. So that's all I have for now.
Great. Kevin, do you have anything for us?
Nothing for me, nope.
Just want to update, talking to Kyle, since he's so eager about the Parks and Rec Commission, which is exciting. Him and I have been in talks just about the policies, because that's one of his big to-dos, is working on policies and drafting them and going over them during the commission meetings. And so he came to me asking about anything that we've heard from council, from community members. And I told him that I would relay that message to all of you. And so that if you guys have anything that comes to your mind that the community has brought to your attention, feel free to reach out to Kyle, because he's just going to town on policies and creating policies. And I know he already has 2 drafted, and I'm sure he has a bank of some that he's going to draft. So yeah, just let him know.
That's great.
And that's it.
Nothing this evening.
Nothing this evening, thank you.
All right. I don't have anything either. This is the end of the regular scheduled meeting. We are going to close session. Does anyone want to make that motion to go into closed session?
Mr. Mayor, just as a matter of order, just to be clear that this is not we're not closing the regular meeting. We are recessing the regular meeting, and then we will adjourn the meeting after the closed session, just to be clear about that.
Yep, thank you.
I'll move to close the meeting pursuant to Minnesota Statute 13D.05 Subdivision 3C3 to develop or consider offers or counteroffers for the purchase or sale of real or personal property identified as Lot 1, Block 2, DePonte First Edition, and Lot 1, Block 1, DePonte Third Edition, Washington County, Minnesota. Closed session will be held in the Forest Lake Conference Room and will commence immediately. Once the closed session is completed, the City Council will reconvene the open meeting portion in council chambers. Once back in session, the council will adjourn the regularly scheduled council meeting.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We're in closed session.